I have always been a straightforward person. So when I discovered that my firefighter boyfriend's phone was filled with flirty messages from a girl I had never even heard of, I walked straight up to him, handed him his phone, and demanded an explanation. After a long silence, he finally confessed. She's a girl with depression. I rescued her during a call. He paused before continuing. I admit I developed some feelings for her, but Olivia, we've been together since high school. That's not something I could throw away easily. He looked at me seriously. I promise from now on, I'll keep my distance from her. Seeing the sincerity in Daniel's eyes, I swallowed the pain in my chest and chose to forgive him. The wedding would continue exactly as planned, but on the day of our wedding, everything fell apart. Suddenly, several firefighters from Daniel's team rushed into the venue. Captain, Emily found out about your wedding. One of them was out of breath. She's threatening to jump off a building. The diamond ring slipped from Daniel's fingers and hit the floor with a sharp metallic sound. Without another word, he dashed toward the door. I shouted after him, my eyes already red with tears. Daniel, if you walk out that door today, it's over between us forever. He hesitated for only a second. Then he left, without looking back. In the end, he broke his promise. The wedding hall exploded into chaos. The whispers of the guests pierced my ears like thousands of tiny needles. Both of our parents rushed toward me, confused about what had just happened. Daniel's teammate Ryan stood nearby looking helpless, his face red with embarrassment. Olivia? Emily has severe depression, he explained awkwardly. The last time she tried to jump, the captain saved her. She depends on him completely. Only he can convince her to come down. He lowered his voice. It's a matter of life and death. The captain didn't really have a choice. Please don't blame him. Ryan had worked with Daniel for 3 years. He had always been respectful toward me, always greeting me warmly whenever we met. But now he couldn't even meet my eyes. And I couldn't help wondering, how many of Daniel's secrets had he helped hide? And what exactly was Daniel's relationship with that girl named Emily? A sharp pain spread through my chest like cracks forming across frozen ice. For the first time, I truly felt Daniel's betrayal. 5 hours passed. I called Daniel 108 times. He didn't answer a single one. I watched my phone screen light up, go dark, light up again, over and over until the battery finally died. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of the church, scattering fragments of color across the floor. One beam landed directly on my empty ring finger. The guests slowly began leaving. Confetti was scattered across the ground. Plates of untouched food sat abandoned on the tables. Everything that had once looked like a celebration now looked like the remains of something broken. Suddenly, I felt dizzy. The room began to spin around me. The last thing I heard was my mother crying my name. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, the sharp smell of disinfectant filled my nose. A nurse stood beside my hospital bed, adjusting the IV drip. When she noticed I was awake, she spoke gently. You need to calm down now. You're not alone anymore. I frowned slightly, confused. What do you mean? She gave me a small smile. You're pregnant. There's a life growing inside you now. You can't let yourself get so upset. My entire body froze. Pregnant. Tears slid quietly down the sides of my face and into my hair. Memories flooded my mind. I was 17 again. The day Daniel handed me his first love letter on the high school football field. He had been so nervous that he could barely stand still. Then college. The time he took a 20-hour train ride just to surprise me for a single weekend. Then the day he became a firefighter. His eyes had been shining with excitement when he told me, I want to protect people, and I'll always protect you too. 7 years. 7 years of memories rushed through my mind like a movie playing too fast. When I finally looked up, both my parents and Daniel's parents were standing near the hospital bed. Their faces were filled with excitement. They were whispering about the baby, but tears filled my eyes. How was I supposed to tell them that the 7-year relationship they believed in had already ended? At 7 p.m., Daniel finally appeared. He had been gone for 6 hours. His face was pale, and his eyes were filled with guilt. Olivia. I'm sorry. His voice sounded rough. Emily. I couldn't let her die. Saving people is my job. I swallowed the bitterness in my throat. There are dozens of firefighters in your department, I said quietly. Did it have to be you? I looked straight at him. She chose our wedding day to jump, and she demanded that you be the one to save her. My voice trembled. What do you think that means, Daniel? I'm not stupid. He didn't answer immediately. After a long silence, he finally reached for my cold hands. Olivia, in 7 years, I've never asked you for anything. His voice sounded hoarse. Just this once. Please don't make a big deal out of this. Don't make things harder for Emily. My heart tightened painfully. I'm worried about her condition. She can't handle too much stress. I stared at him in disbelief. He shouldn't have been asking me for a favor. He should have been apologizing. But his first instinct was to protect her, not me. Not the woman he had just abandoned at the altar. Tears fell silently onto the white hospital sheets. It took everything I had just to say one word. Fine. Daniel visibly relaxed. Emily is really unstable right now, he continued carefully. Now that she knows about the wedding, maybe we should postpone it for a while. He looked hopeful. I'll help her get treatment. Maybe 3 months. Just 3 months. When she's doing better, we'll have the wedding, okay? 3 months. I had already waited 7 years. 3 more months shouldn't have mattered. But when I saw the concern for another woman in his eyes, something inside me suddenly went cold. The baby inside my stomach shifted slightly, as if it could feel my emotions. I placed a hand gently over my abdomen. 6 weeks. A tiny life growing quietly inside me. Hours. And yet somehow, it suddenly had nothing to do with him anymore. I slowly pulled my hand away. My voice was calm and distant. Daniel, I'm not good at remembering things, but there are some memories I can't forget. He looked confused. I continued slowly. I remember when you gave me that love letter at 17. You were so nervous you could barely walk straight. I remember the first time you held my hand. Your palm was so sweaty, but you refused to let go for 3 whole blocks. I remember graduation day. You hugged me and said you would take care of me forever. You said you would make me the happiest bride in the world. My voice started shaking. For 7 years, you remembered every little thing about me. You remembered that I hate onions and ginger. You remembered to make ginger tea for me during my period. You remembered all my habits. I always believed that I meant more to you than anything else. I looked at him. Tears blurred my vision. But today, I don't feel your love anymore. 7 years of memories crashed down on me all at once. Daniel's eyes turned red too. A tear rolled down his cheek. But Olivia... He hesitated. Then he said the one sentence that destroyed the last piece of hope I had left. Emily needs me right now. Just one sentence. She needs me. That was enough. I suddenly laughed through my tears. Then go. Daniel looked surprised, as if he hadn't expected that answer. But in the end, he didn't say anything. He simply turned around and walked out of the hospital room. The next morning, I packed my things and prepared to leave. But just as I turned the corner in the hospital hallway, I ran into Daniel again. His eyes weren't even on me. All his attention was focused on the girl standing beside him. She wore a hospital gown, her face pale, leaning against him like a frightened deer. So this was the woman he had abandoned me for at the altar. My stare must have been too obvious. Because she noticed me first. She immediately shrank behind Daniel, gripping his sleeve tightly. Only then did Daniel turn around. The moment he saw me, he frowned. Olivia, Emily is emotionally fragile, he said impatiently. Whatever you want to say, let's talk at home. Don't make a scene in the hospital and scare her. Emily peeked timidly from behind him. Olivia, Daniel and I really didn't. Please don't misunderstand. I tightened my grip on the ultrasound report in my hand until my knuckles turned white, but I forced a thin smile. You're overthinking it. I'm just here to check out of the hospital. Without another word, I walked toward the billing office. Daniel seemed slightly surprised by how calm I was. For a brief second, something strange crossed his face, almost like discomfort. He stepped forward and reached out, trying to stop me. Instinctively, I turned slightly, and that's when I noticed it, a dark stain on my trench coat. I hadn't seen it before. Daniel noticed it too. Without thinking, he immediately took off his jacket and moved to place it over my shoulders. Here, he said quietly. But I stepped back. He froze for a moment. Then he followed me again, reaching for my coat. Give it to me. You like that coat. I'll take it to the cleaners. I shook my head. Without hesitation, I walked to a nearby trash can and threw the coat inside. Just throw it away, I said flatly. I don't like things with stains. You know how picky I am about that. Daniel's smile stiffened. He knew I wasn't just talking about the coat. I was talking about us. Before he could say anything else, I had already finished my discharge paperwork. Then I walked out of the hospital. Not long after leaving, my phone vibrated. A message from Daniel. Don't be mad. I bought those Napoleon pastries you said you wanted. Remember to pick them up when they're delivered. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I looked down at the familiar pink pastry box sitting beside me. Daniel had always done this. Whenever he made me angry, He would buy pastries from that same bakery as an apology. I opened the box slowly and took a small bite. Before, they had always tasted sweet. Now they tasted bitter. Hard to swallow. Daniel didn't come home that night. Leaving a relationship that had lasted 7 years hurt far more than I had imagined. I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake until the sky outside slowly began to brighten. Finally, I got up and started packing. Inside the closet hung 2 matching hoodies we had bought together, side by side. On the bookshelf were framed photos from our trips. Sticky notes still covered the refrigerator door. Every single object carried a memory. Each one felt like a small knife cutting into my chest. I remembered the year we graduated. Daniel had just become a firefighter. He worked exhausting shifts, sometimes day and night, but on his days off, he always came to see me. His eyes would light up whenever he saw me. "Olivia," he once said with excitement, "when I save enough for a down payment, I'll marry you." 3 years later, he stood in front of me holding a property deed and a diamond ring. His hands were shaking. "I did it," he said proudly. "I bought us a home. I kept my promise." That day the sunlight had been beautiful. I had thrown my arms around him and cried for a long time. I truly believed I was the luckiest woman in the world. Together we painted the walls. Together we assembled the furniture. We filled the balcony with sunflowers. My favorite flowers. Daniel said he wanted our home to always be full of sunlight. But now, that home could no longer hold me. When I sealed the last moving box, the sky outside was beginning to brighten. Soon the moving workers arrived to carry everything out. Just as they began loading the truck, both of our parents suddenly appeared at the door. I hadn't told them what had really happened with Daniel. They still didn't understand why a couple who had been about to get married was suddenly separating. My parents sighed deeply but didn't ask many questions. "Come home whenever you want," my mother said softly. Daniel's mother grabbed my hand and refused to let go. "Olivia, please give Daniel another chance," she pleaded. "What happened at the wedding? He just made a mistake." I didn't answer. I simply watched the movers carry another box outside. Daniel's mother kept begging. Her voice grew weaker and weaker, just as she ran out of words. The door suddenly opened. Daniel walked in, and he wasn't alone. Emily was with him. She was wearing Daniel's jacket, and the moment she stepped inside, she clung to his arm tightly, like a frightened cat that had finally found its owner. The entire room fell silent. Everyone stared at them. Daniel's mother's voice trembled. "Daniel, did you betray Olivia?" His father's hands were shaking with anger. "Who is this woman?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, his eyes slowly scanned the empty living room. Then they landed on me. "You're moving out?" Daniel's question hung in the air. "You're moving out?" He sounded genuinely confused, as if he had just walked into an ordinary afternoon instead of the aftermath of a destroyed wedding, as if nothing serious had happened. I slowly turned around to face him. My eyes were dry now, irritated from a sleepless night. Emily clung tightly to his arm, half hiding behind him like a frightened animal. Her fingers twisted the sleeve of Daniel's jacket nervously. Daniel's father suddenly stepped forward. His normally calm face was red with anger. "Are you seriously asking that question?" he shouted. "You walk into this house with another woman, and the first thing you ask your fiancé is whether she's moving out?" Daniel finally looked around the room. He noticed the boxes, the empty shelves, the furniture already gone. Only then did he seem to realize something was wrong. "Dad, it's not like that," he said quickly. "Emily was discharged from the hospital today. She didn't have anywhere to go. I just brought her here for a while." He glanced at me. I didn't think Olivia would already be packing everything. Before anyone could respond, my mother stepped forward. I had never seen her this angry. "You didn't think?" she snapped. "You didn't think when you left my daughter standing alone at the altar in front of 300 guests. You didn't think when she collapsed and ended up in the hospital because of you. And now you bring another woman into her home?" Daniel clenched his jaw. "She's not another woman," he insisted. "I already explained. Emily is someone I saved. She needs help right now." At that moment, Emily suddenly spoke. Her voice trembled softly. "Please, don't fight because of me." She peeked out from behind Daniel, her eyes already filled with tears. "I never meant to ruin anyone's wedding. Daniel only came because he wanted to save my life." She lowered her head pitifully. "I have no one else in the world. If he hadn't come yesterday, I wouldn't even be alive right now. Please don't blame him. He's a good man." The room fell silent. Then suddenly, I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was short, bitter, and sharp. Everyone turned to look at me. I stepped forward slowly. "Emily, I said calmly. You're impressive. She blinked, confused. You're very good at making a grown man feel responsible for your life. My voice stayed steady. You use guilt, fear, tears, and somehow you make it look like sacrifice. Her face stiffened. But listen carefully, I continued. That act might work on him. I gestured toward Daniel. He clearly enjoys playing the hero, but in this room with people who actually know the truth, I looked straight into her eyes. No one here believes you. Olivia! Daniel suddenly snapped. He stepped forward immediately, instinctively shielding Emily behind him. Enough! His voice was sharp. She's mentally unstable. You don't need to attack her. I stared at him. He continued, clearly frustrated. I already told you at the hospital yesterday. She's fragile right now. You said you understood. You said you were willing to wait. We're only postponing the wedding for 3 months so she can recover. Why do you have to humiliate her in front of everyone? His words felt like a slap. So now I was the one humiliating someone? The irony was almost unbelievable. Before I could respond, Daniel's father suddenly raised his hand. Slap. The sound echoed through the empty living room. Daniel stumbled backward, stunned. His hand slowly moved to his reddening cheek. You ungrateful idiot, his father roared. You humiliated the best woman you could have ever hoped to marry. You abandoned her at the altar, and now you dare defend another woman in front of her? Tears filled the old man's eyes. You are not the son I raised. Daniel's mother started crying. She clung to my mother helplessly. Olivia, I'm so sorry, she whispered, but I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt empty. I walked slowly to the kitchen counter. The house keys were lying there. I picked them up. The metal clink echoed in the quiet room. Daniel, I said calmly. He looked at me. Yesterday, when I agreed to postpone the wedding, I paused. That wasn't because I wanted to wait. He frowned slightly. I just wanted to see how quickly you would push me aside again for her. I let the keys fall onto the floor in front of him. You didn't even last 12 hours. The sound of the keys hitting the floor felt final. I'm not moving out, I said quietly. I'm leaving. I walked toward the door slowly. As I passed Daniel, he suddenly grabbed my wrist. Olivia, wait. His voice sounded different now, less confident, almost afraid. Let's talk about this calmly. Give my parents a few minutes to settle down. Don't throw away 7 years like this. For a moment, the warmth of his hand almost made my chest tighten again, but I pulled my arm away firmly. You already threw it away, I said quietly, in a church full of people. Then I turned to the moving workers waiting near the door. You can continue, I told them. Everything goes on the truck. Without looking back, I walked outside. My parents followed closely behind me. The morning sunlight hit my face the moment I stepped outside. It was bright, cold, and strangely freeing. For the first time since the wedding, I could breathe. The first 30 days felt unbearable. Leaving a 7-year relationship was like losing a part of your body. The pain was constant. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and instinctively reach for the other side of the bed, but it was always empty. At the grocery store, I would automatically pick up Daniel's favorite brand of coffee. Then I would freeze halfway through the aisle, realizing there was no reason to buy it anymore. My hands would tremble as I placed it back on the shelf. But unlike Daniel, I wasn't completely alone. I moved to a coastal town about 3 hours away, far from the fire station, far from the memories. I found a remote job as a graphic designer. The work allowed me to stay home most of the time. I kept the curtains open while I worked, so sunlight filled the living room. Every time I felt a small movement in my stomach, I reminded myself why I had to keep moving forward. At first, the baby's movements were soft, almost like tiny butterfly wings, but each one gave me strength. During my 3-month ultrasound, the nurse smiled warmly. She moved the scanner gently across my stomach. The baby looks strong, she said. The heartbeat is fast and steady. She glanced around the room. Is anyone here with you today? The father, maybe? For a moment, the question lingered in the air, but it no longer hurt the way it once had. I looked at the small shape on the monitor. My baby, my future. No, I said calmly. It's just the 2 of us. And somehow, that was enough. While my life slowly became peaceful again, Daniel's world was collapsing. I only heard bits and pieces from my parents, who still occasionally spoke with his. Apparently, Emily had moved into the house Daniel and I once shared. She said she needed constant supervision because of her mental state, and Daniel, still trapped in his hero complex, felt responsible for taking care of her. But the situation quickly became unbearable. One night, after an exhausting 12-hour shift, Daniel came home hoping to finally rest. His boots were dirty from smoke and ash. All he wanted was silence. But Emily couldn't tolerate silence, especially if the attention wasn't on her. "Daniel?" Her voice called from the hallway. She appeared wearing one of his oversized shirts. "You promised you would take me to therapy today." Her eyes looked wide and wounded. "I waited by the window all afternoon." Daniel rubbed his tired eyes. "I texted you 3 times, he said. "There was a highway accident. 4 people trapped in a car. I couldn't leave." "You didn't read the messages?" Emily's voice trembled. "You know I can't check my phone when you're not here. My anxiety gets worse." She clutched the door frame dramatically. "I almost called emergency services again. I felt like I couldn't breathe." Her voice cracked. "Do you not care about me anymore? If you're going to abandon me like everyone else, just tell me now." She slowly touched her throat. "Maybe I should just finish what I started on that rooftop." The mention of the rooftop made Daniel's jaw tighten. For months, he had rushed to comfort her every time she said something like that. But tonight, something inside him finally shifted. "Emily," he said slowly, "you can't threaten that every time I come home late." His voice sounded colder than usual. "I have a job. People depend on me." For a brief second, the fragile expression on Emily's face disappeared. Something darker flickered in her eyes. But then she immediately collapsed onto the floor, sobbing loudly. Daniel stood there, watching her cry. 5 minutes passed. 10. For the first time. He didn't rush to comfort her, and for the first time, he began to realize something terrifying. Maybe the girl he thought he had saved had been slowly destroying his life all along. A few weeks later, the situation became even worse. One morning, Daniel and the rest of his crew were performing routine equipment checks at the fire station. The large garage doors were open. The engines were lined up, and the firefighters were preparing hoses and tools. Everything was normal, until a sharp voice suddenly echoed through the building. "Where is Daniel?" Every firefighter froze. They turned toward the entrance. Emily was standing there. Her hair was messy, and she was still wearing what looked like pajamas under a thin coat. She walked straight across the garage floor without hesitation. 10 firefighters stared at her in disbelief. She ignored them. "Where's my firefighter?" she shouted again. Daniel's face went pale the moment he saw her. Before he could react, Emily ran directly toward him and wrapped her arms tightly around his waist. She pressed her face against his jacket. "You didn't answer my messages for 40 minutes, she said, her voice trembling dramatically. "I thought you were dead." The entire garage fell silent. Marcus exchanged an uncomfortable glance with the station captain. The atmosphere had completely changed. 3 months ago, Marcus had stood in a church trying to defend Daniel. But now, even he felt something twist in his stomach. Emily's dramatic behavior had crossed a line. Daniel gently tried to move her away. "Emily, what are you doing here?" he asked quietly. "You shouldn't be here." She clung even tighter. "I was scared," she said. "You know I panic when you don't answer." Several firefighters looked away awkwardly. Others stared at the ground. The tension in the room was unbearable. The station captain finally stepped forward. "Daniel," he said firmly. "My office, now." The captain's office was small. The walls were lined with old certificates and faded photographs. Daniel sat stiffly in the chair across from the metal desk. Outside the partially closed blinds, he could see several firefighters whispering among themselves. Captain Harris rubbed his tired eyes before speaking. "Daniel, you're one of the best firefighters I've got." His voice was calm but serious. "You've saved lives. You've done work most men wouldn't dare do." He leaned forward slightly. "But what happened out there today cannot happen again." Daniel lowered his head. "I'm sorry, sir. Emily is going through a severe mental health crisis. I didn't want to leave her alone today." The captain tapped 2 fingers slowly against the desk. "Son, every firefighter here has a family. Every one of them worries when that alarm goes off." He paused. "But none of their wives or girlfriends show up here in pajamas screaming for attention." Daniel stayed silent. The captain's expression hardened. "That girl doesn't need a hero. She needs professional treatment. And you—" He looked Daniel straight in the eyes. "You're not her therapist." Daniel clenched his hands. "I saved her, Captain. If I abandon her now—" "You saved her from a roof," Captain Harris interrupted. "You didn't save her from herself." The room fell silent. Then the captain added quietly, "And while trying to save her, you've been destroying your own life." Daniel's stomach tightened. The captain continued. "Your friend Marcus came to me this morning. Daniel looked up quickly. He requested a shift transfer. The words hit him like a punch. Marcus requested a transfer? Daniel repeated softly. He said he can't focus during emergencies anymore, the captain replied. He's worried that girl might show up here again and create another scene. The captain leaned back in his chair. Daniel, you're suspended for 2 weeks. Daniel's head snapped up. With pay, the captain added. But you're not coming back until you deal with this situation. He pointed toward the door. Either that girl gets real professional help, or you start looking for another career. Daniel left the fire station under the hot afternoon sun, for the first time in years. He felt completely lost. The respect of his teammates, the pride of wearing the uniform, everything suddenly felt fragile. He took out his phone. Almost instinctively, he searched for one name, Olivia. His thumb hovered over the call button. It had been nearly 3 months since he had heard from her. Her parents had blocked his number. His own family barely answered his calls anymore, and the house he once shared with her now felt empty and suffocating. Still, he pressed the call button. The phone rang once, then a robotic voice answered. The number you have dialed is not in service. Daniel froze. She had changed her number, just like that. Olivia had erased him from her life. Meanwhile, 3 hours away in my new city, I was standing in a paint store. I was choosing between 2 shades of soft blue for the nursery walls. Sunlight poured through the large windows of my new home. My belly had grown noticeably round beneath my loose dress. Suddenly, I felt a gentle kick. Then another. I smiled immediately and placed a hand over my stomach. Easy there, I murmured softly. We've got plenty of time. The delivery truck carrying the baby furniture would arrive next month, and for the first time in months, my life finally felt peaceful. Daniel drove home slowly that afternoon. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a firefighter. He felt like a man who had lost control of everything. When he opened the front door, the house was dark. All the blinds were closed. The air smelled stale, mixed with the scent of leftover takeout containers. Daniel? Emily's voice came from the hallway. She walked toward him slowly, barefoot. What are you doing home so early? Her eyes narrowed slightly. Did something happen at the station? Daniel dropped his bag near the door. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he said quietly, I've been suspended. Emily froze. What? For 2 weeks, he continued, because of everything that's been happening. Her expression changed immediately. You mean, because of me? Daniel looked at her tiredly. No, he said. Because of my choices. Silence filled the room. Then Emily's voice started shaking. So now everyone hates me, she said. Your friends hate me too, don't they? Daniel ran a hand over his face. This isn't about hate, but you need real help, Emily. You skip therapy appointments. You stop taking the medication. And every time something goes wrong, you threaten to hurt yourself. Her eyes widened instantly. Are you saying I'm lying? I'm saying this can't continue, Daniel replied. His voice sounded calmer now, but much colder. I postponed my wedding because of you. I lost my fiancé because of you. And now my career is falling apart. Emily took a step backward. You're blaming me? She whispered. Tears began rolling down her face. You promised you would take care of me. Her breathing grew faster. If you abandon me like everyone else, I swear I'll end everything tonight. She pointed toward the staircase. I'll jump from the window upstairs. For months, those words would have made Daniel panic. He would have rushed to calm her down. He would have apologized. But now he just stood there, watching her. Something inside him had finally broken. Then open the window, he said quietly. Emily blinked. What? Open it, Daniel repeated. His voice was cold, but don't expect me to run and save you this time. The words hung in the air. Emily stared at him in disbelief. Slowly, she walked toward the large living room window. Her movements were hesitant. She kept glancing back, waiting for him to stop her, but Daniel didn't move. He walked into the kitchen instead. He opened the refrigerator and grabbed a bottle of water, while she stood near the window, waiting. Daniel! She shouted suddenly. I'm serious. Then do it, he answered without looking at her. Or call 911 and tell them you need help. He leaned against the counter. I'm not your emergency hotline anymore. Emily's expression changed instantly. For the first time since he met her, the fragile, helpless girl disappeared. What remained was pure anger. You're disgusting, she hissed. You're just like everyone else. She kicked a magazine across the floor, then stormed down the hallway and slammed the guest room door. The house became quiet again. Daniel slowly slid down the kitchen cabinets until he was sitting on the floor. He pulled out his phone, then opened the calendar. 3 months. Exactly 3 months since the hospital conversation. The same 3 months he had asked Olivia to wait. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he tried calling her again. The same robotic voice answered. "The number you have dialed is not in service." His chest tightened. Desperately, he searched her social media. Nothing. She had deleted or blocked everything. She had disappeared completely. Finally, Daniel scrolled through his contacts until he found one last number, Olivia's parents' house. His finger trembled before pressing the call button. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Then someone answered. "Yes?" It was her father. "Sir, it's Daniel," he said quickly. "Please don't hang up." There was a long pause. Then her father spoke coldly. "You have 10 seconds before I call the police for harassment." "Please," Daniel said desperately. "The 3 months are over. I kept my promise. Emily is stable now. I need to talk to Olivia." My head was a mess back then, but our wedding can still happen. A bitter laugh came through the phone. "The wedding?" her father said. "Are you insane, boy?" "My daughter picked her engagement ring off the floor of a church while 300 people watched. And you think she's still waiting for you?" Daniel's chest tightened. "I love her," he whispered. "I know she still loves me. Just tell me where she is." "She doesn't want to see you," her father replied. "And she hasn't even said your name in 2 months. She moved away. She started a new life, and she's happy without the burden you turned out to be." The words hit harder than any punch. "You will never find her again," the older man continued. "And if you ever run into her on the street, you'd better walk the other way." Then the line went dead. The call ended. Daniel stared at the phone. His hands slowly dropped to his sides, for the first time in months. He finally understood what he had lost. 3 hours away from the life Daniel had just destroyed, I was building a crib. The small room smelled like fresh paint and new wood. Soft yellow walls reflected the afternoon sunlight that streamed through the window. I tightened the last screw on the crib rail and leaned back, slightly out of breath. My belly had grown noticeably. 6 months pregnant. A small kick pressed gently against my side. I smiled immediately and rested my hand over my stomach. "Easy," I murmured softly. "We're almost done." I had chosen a crib decorated with small carved giraffes. It made the whole room feel warm, peaceful, the kind of place a child deserved to grow up in. I stood up slowly and walked toward the window. Outside, the coastal town was calm. No sirens, no chaos, just quiet streets and sunlight. For the first time in years, my life felt stable. Meanwhile, Daniel's life was falling apart. The house that once held our dreams had become unbearable. The furniture we had chosen together now sat half covered in dust. Boxes remained half unpacked. Emily had taken over the guest room completely, but the emotional pressure she created filled every corner of the house. Daniel had barely slept for weeks. Every night she found a new crisis, another panic attack, another emotional breakdown, another threat, and every time he had rushed to calm her, until the day something finally snapped. That evening, Daniel returned home from the grocery store. Emily was sitting on the couch with the lights off. The television flickered quietly in the dark. "You're late," she said immediately. Daniel set the grocery bag on the table. "I told you I had errands." Her eyes narrowed. "You didn't answer my messages." "I was driving." She stood up slowly. "You know I panic when you don't answer." Daniel stayed silent. Then she said the familiar words again. I started thinking about the rooftop. The same threat. The same manipulation. But this time Daniel didn't react. He simply stared at her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, he said quietly, "I'm done." Emily blinked. "What?" "I'm done living like this." Her face immediately twisted with anger. "You promised to take care of me." "I promised to help you," Daniel corrected, "but you don't want help. You want control." The room fell silent. Then Emily laughed bitterly. "You think you're some kind of victim now?" She stepped closer. "You're the one who chose to leave your fiancé. No one forced you." Daniel's hands clenched. "I know," he said quietly. "And that's something I'll regret for the rest of my life." Emily's expression darkened. "If you walk away from me now," she said slowly, "I'll tell everyone you abused me." Daniel looked at her calmly. "Go ahead." The answer caught her off guard. "I've already lost everything that mattered. My job is hanging by a thread. My family barely speaks to me. and the woman I loved most in this world is gone. He opened the front door. You don't have anything left to threaten me with. Emily stared at him for several seconds. For the first time, she realized she had lost control. Without another word, she grabbed her bag and stormed out of the house. The door slammed behind her. The silence that followed was overwhelming. Daniel sank into the couch slowly. His eyes drifted toward the balcony. That same balcony where sunflowers used to grow, where Olivia once stood laughing in the sunlight. He pressed his hands over his face, and for the first time in months, he cried. Far away, I was finishing the nursery. The crib stood near the window. Soft blankets filled the small mattress. I sat in the rocking chair and looked around the room. Everything felt calm. Everything felt safe. The baby kicked again. I smiled. Looks like you approve, I whispered. My life was no longer connected to Daniel's mistakes, and with every passing day, his shadow faded a little more. 6 months passed. Time had quietly reshaped both of our lives. For me, those months felt like the slow rebuilding of a peaceful world. For Daniel, they became the slow collapse of everything he once believed he had. It was a warm Thursday morning in my new city. My pregnancy was already close to 7 months. My round belly was clearly visible beneath my floral dress as I walked through the open-air shopping plaza near my house. I had just left the maternity clinic. The doctor had said everything looked perfect. The baby was healthy, strong. I stopped at a small bakery cafe nearby and bought a box of pastries. Pregnancy cravings had made sweets irresistible lately. I sat at an outdoor table, enjoying the sunlight and flipping through a book about newborn care. For a moment, everything felt calm, safe. A few meters away, Daniel walked slowly across the same plaza. He hadn't come there to relax. The fire department had demanded proof that Emily was receiving psychiatric treatment before reconsidering his suspension. He had driven 3 hours to find a specialist clinic in another city, but right now, he was exhausted. Daniel looked nothing like the confident firefighter people once admired. His uniform was gone. Instead, he wore a wrinkled jacket. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. In just 6 months, he seemed to have aged 10 years. Emily was asleep in the car, claiming she was too tired to walk inside the pharmacy. Daniel walked into the cafe to grab a drink while waiting for her medication to be filled. The small bell above the cafe door rang softly. The sound made me glance up, and in that exact moment, our eyes met. The world seemed to stop. My teacup almost slipped from my hand. For a brief second, my heart skipped, but the calm I had built over months quickly returned. I took a slow breath. Meanwhile, Daniel froze completely. He stared at me like he had just seen a ghost. His eyes scanned my face first. Then slowly, they moved downward, to my stomach. The round curve beneath my dress. The realization hit him instantly. 7 years together, the wedding day, the hospital, the moment he walked away. The timeline clicked together inside his mind. The color drained from his face. Olivia, he whispered. His voice sounded broken. He took a shaky step toward my table. Olivia? Without waiting for permission, he sat down across from me. People nearby began glancing at us curiously. His voice trembled. You're pregnant. I closed my book calmly. Good morning, Daniel. My voice sounded distant, polite, almost like speaking to a stranger. He stared at my stomach again, then covered his mouth with both hands. His breathing became uneven. At the hospital, he said slowly, the day you collapsed. He looked up at me with desperate eyes. You were pregnant back then, weren't you? I nodded once. Yes, the single word seemed to break something inside him. My God. Tears filled his eyes. That means... His voice cracked. That baby is mine. People at nearby tables were now openly watching. Daniel leaned forward, shaking. Why didn't you tell me? His voice rose slightly. If I had known... Olivia, I would never have left with Emily that day. We would be raising our child together right now. His hands trembled on the table. That's my baby. For a moment, the air between us grew heavy. Then I leaned forward slightly. My voice was calm, cold. And you think that would have changed anything? Daniel looked stunned. Of course it would. No, I replied quietly. It wouldn't. He stared at me, confused. If you had known that day, I continued, you wouldn't have stayed because you loved me. You would have stayed because you felt obligated. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. You would still be running around trying to save Emily every time she called, I said. And my child would grow up watching his father play hero for everyone except his own family. Daniel's shoulders began shaking. I would have changed. You had 7 years to prove that, I replied. Silence filled the table. He slowly reached his hand toward my stomach, just a few inches away. But before he could touch it, I stood up. I picked up the pastry box and my bag. Don't, I said quietly. His hand froze in the air. Go back to your life, Daniel. My child and I are doing just fine. I turned and walked away without looking back. Behind me, Daniel remained sitting at the cafe table, completely shattered. For the first time since he became a firefighter, there was nothing left for him to save. Daniel sat at the cafe table long after I walked away. The noise of the street slowly returned around him. People talked. Cars passed. Waiters moved between tables, but he barely noticed any of it. His mind replayed the same image over and over. My round belly. 7 months. His child. A child he hadn't even known existed. A child who would grow up without him. Eventually, the cafe manager approached him gently. Sir, are you okay? Daniel nodded weakly and stood up. His legs felt heavy as he walked back toward the parking lot. The afternoon sun felt harsh against his face. When he reached the car, Emily was still sitting in the passenger seat. She looked irritated the moment he opened the door. Where were you? She snapped. I've been waiting forever. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He started the engine slowly. We're leaving, he said quietly. Emily frowned. What about my prescription? I already picked it up. The car pulled onto the road. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Then Emily glanced at him suspiciously. You look weird. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. I saw Olivia today. Emily stiffened immediately. What? She's pregnant. The words filled the car like an explosion. Emily stared at him. And? Daniel's voice trembled slightly. The baby is mine. Silence followed. But instead of looking shocked, Emily rolled her eyes. Well, that's unfortunate. Daniel turned his head slowly. What did you just say? She shrugged. Relax. Women get pregnant all the time. Daniel's grip tightened on the steering wheel. That's my child. And, she said again, you're not even with her anymore. Daniel pulled the car onto the side of the road suddenly. The tires scraped against gravel. Emily looked annoyed. What are you doing? Daniel turned toward her. For the first time in months, his expression was completely different. Cold, exhausted, done. I ruined my life for you. Emily laughed bitterly. No, she said. You ruined it for yourself. You chose me. No one forced you. Daniel stared at her. The truth hurt more than anything. You manipulated everything, he said quietly. Every crisis, every threat. You used me. Emily crossed her arms. Oh, please. You loved playing the hero. She leaned closer. You liked feeling needed. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, something had changed. Get out of the car. Emily blinked. What? You heard me. Her expression darkened. If you leave me here, I'll tell everyone you abused me. Daniel didn't react. I'll ruin your career. Go ahead, he replied calmly. There's nothing left to ruin. My job is already hanging by a thread. My family barely speaks to me. And the woman I loved most in this world is gone. Emily stared at him. For the first time, she realized the power she once had over him had disappeared. Daniel pressed the unlock button. The car doors clicked open. Get out. Emily hesitated. Then she grabbed her bag angrily and stepped out onto the roadside. Before slamming the door, she glared at him. You deserve everything that happened to you. Daniel didn't respond. He simply drove away, for the first time in months. The car felt quiet, but the silence didn't bring relief. It only reminded him of everything he had lost. Meanwhile, my life continued peacefully. My pregnancy reached the final weeks. The nursery was ready. The crib stood near the window. Soft blankets filled the small mattress. Every evening I sat in the rocking chair, resting my hands on my stomach, feeling the baby move. Each movement felt like a promise that the future could still be beautiful, even after everything that had happened. Winter arrived quietly. The air outside had turned cold, but inside my house everything felt warm. The day Liam was born was calm and simple. No chaos, no fear, just quiet anticipation. After hours of labor, the nurse finally placed him in my arms, a small, warm weight against my chest. His tiny fingers curled instinctively. The moment I looked at his face, something inside me settled. All the pain from the past year suddenly felt distant, worth it. Because now I understood something clearly. Leaving had been the right decision. 3 weeks passed. My parents stayed with me to help during the first days. Life slowly settled into a new routine: feeding, sleeping, rocking the crib beside the window. One quiet afternoon, I was sitting in the living room nursing Liam when the doorbell rang. My father went to answer it. A moment later, the hallway fell silent. The silence felt heavy. Then my father called my name. "Olivia." His voice sounded tense. "You have an unwanted visitor." I gently placed Liam back into his crib and walked toward the front door. When I stepped into the hallway, I saw him. Daniel stood outside on the porch. He looked nothing like the man I used to know. His shoulders were thinner. His beard was unshaven. Dark circles surrounded his tired eyes. The proud firefighter everyone admired was gone. In his hands, he held a small silver box. When he saw me, his throat moved nervously. I heard, "The baby was born." His voice sounded hoarse. "I know I have no right to be here." He swallowed. "But please, let me see him. Just for 1 minute." My father stepped forward immediately. "You lost that right 10 months ago in that church." Daniel lowered his head, but I raised my hand slightly. "It's okay," I said quietly. My father stepped aside reluctantly. Daniel's eyes searched my face. Then suddenly, his knees gave out. He dropped to the porch floor. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I was blind. I left Emily months ago. I went to therapy. I quit the fire department because I couldn't face anyone anymore. I know none of that fixes what I did." He lifted the small silver box with trembling hands. "But please, let me try to fix this. I'll work every day for the rest of my life if I have to. We can still be a family." "I still love you." I watched him quietly. There was no anger left in me anymore, only a strange calm. "Open the box," I said softly. Daniel looked confused but did what I asked. Inside were tiny blue knitted baby shoes. Handmade, very small, very delicate. For a brief moment, something warm passed through my chest. "They're beautiful," I said honestly. "I'll put them on him after his bath." Daniel's eyes filled with sudden hope. "So, you forgive me?" he asked carefully. I nodded. "Yes." His face brightened instantly, but then I continued. "I forgave you the moment you stopped mattering to me." The hope in his eyes disappeared, slowly, painfully. "You helped bring Liam into this world," I said calmly. "For that, I will always be grateful. But forgiveness doesn't mean you get to walk back into our lives." Daniel's shoulders collapsed. "My son deserves a peaceful home, not a father who abandoned his mother at the altar." Tears rolled silently down Daniel's face. "You'll still support him legally," I added, "but that's all you will be. A name on paper." I stepped back toward the doorway. "Goodbye, Daniel." Then I closed the door. The sound of the lock turning echoed softly in the quiet house. Outside, his crying faded slowly into the cold winter air. Inside, warm sunlight filled the living room. I walked back toward Liam's crib. He was sleeping peacefully. I gently touched his small hand, and for the first time since everything began, I truly felt like the author of my own life again.